Kanojo Okarishimasu, also known as Rent a Girlfriend, or how I like to call it, the anime adaptation of Cuck, the movie, was an anime that was making some noise while airing. The anime sure has elements to make some polemic around it, and it did. It's similar to a harem, without being one at first, which means waifu bait and romance baits. Not only that, but the premise itself, plus the characterization of the protagonist triggered a lot of people. But let us calm down and go by parts to find out if the series deserves hate or praise, with this scorching review on Rent a Girlfriend. Oh, but I must first give a disclaimer that should be obvious to some of you, but some people might not get it and come out with these excuses. I will be talking about the anime, the adaptation, the season that just aired in summer. That means that I don't care and won't be considering anything of how all of this was executed in the manga. This is not a manga review. Also, the promise of a second season is other thing I won't consider. I don't care what they plan for the future. That we will see in the future, not now. Now, what I will be evaluating is what I saw in the 12 episodes of the first season. And this will apply for every review. With that out of the way, let us begin. To talk about the technical section, first you have to understand what kind of anime this is. It is a rom-com slice of life type of series, and that means that it really doesn't need product values of an action adventure. The characters just go around there and talk. Without being too complex on this, the series can deliver its message just fine. But within the anime of its kind, what does it even have to differentiate it from the rest of forgettable things in this section? Well, the OST isn't for sure. It's almost inexistent, and at best some tracks are okay, but most are not good. The movements sometimes are clunky, and the detail in the drawing is generic. But as I said, all of this is not that relevant here. Not even the visual gags are remarkable to be worth mention. However, what it is, I will say, it's a good use of the color in the series. You see, in this kind of series, the use of color usually ranges to be dry, to boring generic, to gaudy when they want to be brightful, at the point that it hurts your eyes. In the case of this anime, it's on the gaudy side, but in comparison with others, this one feels more pleasant to watch for the eye. Looks colorful and bright, but in a nice way. All of this is better depicted if we look at the character designs. The use of color in the clothing, the hair, the eyes, and such are most of the time well combined together, to at least make the characters recognizable. This even in the male lead's case sometimes, for better or for worse in his case. But why? Let me tell you in the characters. I'll start there, the protagonist, Kinoshita Kazuya. He is the main reason behind the anger of a lot of people. There are those who hate him to no end for his personality and the way to act towards the girls. And, at the same time, are others who feel like he's a well-rounded character that people hate because they don't understand him or something like that. Well, the truth of the matter is, as most things, in a middle ground. On one hand, yes, he is despicable, pathetic, lame, annoying, weak, cringeworthy, a complete loser, and a beta male in all the rules. And some compelling traits here and there, I guess. Then, on the other hand, all of this was obviously intended to be this way. For comedy and for the character to grow throughout the anime, getting out of the hole he is in. As has been done with other characters in anime, like Shinji from Evangelion, who at first was hated for being a crybaby, or Saro from NHK, who was deep in a hole at the start of the series. If Rent a Girlfriend executed this the right way, like the aforementioned series, is something I'll tell you later. The other protagonist of this story is Chizuru Ichinose, or Mizuhara. She's a fine lady committed to her job. She is professional about the things she does. While working, shows herself to be cheerful, lovely, flirtatious, and always smiling. Regularly, she is calm, steady, and pretty reliable with an explosive personality when annoyed. So, as you can see, she is indeed a well-defined character that you can really work with. Next, we had kind of an awkward situation with the rest of the cast. The anime constantly promotes itself as being about these 4 girls, like a harem series. You see them everywhere, but the 2 characters I just mentioned are the only main characters. The rest are just secondary characters, because they don't have as much screen time or fleshing out as the main ones. What that means for them is that aside from their designs and an almost one-dimensional characterization, there is not much going with them. Yes, they hint as they themselves having their own problems and whatnot, but none of this is explored in the list, so it doesn't matter. Take for example Ruka. This character is a complete mess. What a great way to introduce her by showing her panties. What a fantastic way to make us like the character with scenes of deep characterization and reminding the audience constantly why they should care about her and her big boobs. What a clever way to show us her backstory, to sympathize with the character by rushing it all in an ending using manga pages. Hey, it saves screen time and also reminds people they should be buying the manga instead of watching this anime. And it doesn't end there. Her characterization makes no sense at all. By what was shown in her backstory, she supposedly couldn't get excited by things anymore and felt like a robot? Then why the heck? She's literally the most cheerful of the cast, being one of her defining features. I get that maybe she tries to be that way to get excited, but then you don't see any other side of the character. It doesn't exist real conflict in her. And the rest are not even worth mentioning. They have a superficial functional characterization, which is good I guess, but I can keep talking about these things without going to the next section. So, I just hinted some negative aspects in the character section, but let me go more in depth here. I mentioned how the protagonist was intended to be this way for him to grow, but contrary to the aforementioned cases of Evangelion and the NHK, the anime doesn't even come close. This because the character doesn't have any reason of why you should care or sympathize with him. Kazuya doesn't have dreams or aspirations of his own. He doesn't have a future. They don't give you a reason for him to be this pathetic and annoying. He wasn't abandoned by a parent, he wasn't alone, he wasn't rejected from society, he doesn't want to kill himself. Then he doesn't have a real conflict in his life. He's not going to die if he doesn't get a girlfriend, or if he doesn't end up with the girlfriend he wants. There are a lot of girls in the world. Nothing really transcendental is gonna change by this. In the other much better anime that I just mentioned, you accompany the characters and deeply explore their psyche, to really come to understand their issues and how they will overcome the difficulties life is presenting for them. But Kazuya has no real problem in his life. Has a good apartment, has good friends, has parents that support him, has a lot of money to live by without working, is studying in a university without problems, so he is just a lame degenerate idiot. That is not relatable nor compelling in the least for you to tolerate his annoyance or care about his growth. And that growth, let me tell you about that growth. As in the case of series like Welcome to the NHK, the chance for him to improve as a person is given to him by a cute girl who makes an agreement to help him. But unlike the NHK, he never does almost anything of his own to advance this. He's just reacting to the girls all the time. If he ends up acting on himself, that is only because one of the other characters made something before. And even then, with all of this, the series validates the protagonist most of the time. Yes, they make fun of him, but in the end, they tell him that he did good and hit on the fact that he can improve, but never get anywhere with this, and would have never got anywhere if it weren't for the girls. And about the girls and their way to participate in the story, well, let me tell you. The anime is a romance. That means that the anime is about developing the relationship between the main characters and gradually see how they come to love each other. The big problem is that the story doesn't feel organic in the least. Why is that? Because it has too much conveniences. I can let it pass the first convenience of the protagonist having all of this story with his grandmother and binding Mizuhara to the plot, so that the story could start. But then, it just gets ludicrous. The grandmother of the girl not only is in the same hospital at the same time as the protagonist one, they are very good friends. Then, turns out, they both go to the same school. Then, turns out, they also live literally next to each other. Then, they find his friends by casualty and they were just going to go to a reunion where the ex of the protagonist was. Okay, now they go to the beach just with friends, right? But then, turns out that Mizuhara also went to the same beach, the same day, at the same time, in the same place. So they are going to a ferry now. Oh, turns out that she was really sick for some reason, and casually walks away instead of lying down for a while, and falls out of the boat just for the protagonist to save her, and then her save him. Well, time for going into a family trip to an onsen. Oh, but wait! Turns out that the grandmother of Mizuhara just got out of the hospital and planned to go to the same onsen at the same time so they can meet each other again! And so on and so forth. You get the point. This is not good storytelling. I don't understand how people can buy into this story if the only way for the characters to develop is not through their actions, but because mystical forces pull the strings and force them to be together. This is not a true relationship that will develop normally, it's all baiting. Time and time again they two promise to never see each other again and do a big drama about it just for moments later to be forced to stay together again! Oh, but I'm not finished bashing this, we have even more problems. I'll exemplify them with the presentation of the series. First, we have this whole concept of the rental girlfriend service app and whatnot. The thing is completely retarded, it's simply not something that will be easy as doing some agreements and ordering by the phone while nothing bad happens at all. In the series, this thing is seen as a job as any other for some reason. Super hot girls making appointments with loser guys, nothing bad can really happen, right? Look, the concept can really be used to explore a story and some themes, but the anime never does something with this concept, it's just that, a concept, a premise that everyone treats as any other thing. Is never explored in the least. And this is important, because it's a thing of why the series exists in the first place. Imagine if in Death Note, they presented to you the Death Note, and explain its rules but never show its effects of something like that existing in our modern world, and the characters act as if it were like any other weapon. Then you might say, but the anime is just a comedy, you shouldn't take it too seriously. Then why should I take seriously the drama, or the characters, or the relationships? Comedy in the series is a resource, not a fucking premise. So yeah, 0 complexity points. Oh, and what a premise. Remember how I said that the protagonist was intended to be that way and gradually improve? The anime even betrays this concept, and not in the good way. Remember the part of the series where it always validates him? So, the main character being the scumbag he is, somehow infatuates the girls anyways, or hint at them falling in love with him. Heck, he even gets Ruka, the extremely cute and hot girl, to viciously love him at the point of wanting to openly bang him. So that's it, main problem of the series is over. But no, now the baby doesn't want that, now wants the other sex object of a girl, and the quest to form a harem begins. Of which are only vain promises, cause despite of the whole presentation and promotion of the other girls, well, they are just thrown aside. One of them doesn't even is introduced until the penultimate episode. Why? If you weren't gonna do anything with her, aside from making more conveniences, why do you introduce her in a forced way? Why? Why the series does all of this if they are only gonna focus on the two main characters? I wonder why. And for the last thing of this section, guess I have to talk about the comedy in the series, which is not unique nor remarkable in any sense of the word. And because the series wants to create a story with a romance and focuses on that, the comedy is just neglected most of the time to be bottom of the barrel jokes and misunderstandings. So the series can't excuse its lack of depth and conveniences by classifying itself as a pure comedy of nonsense, because obviously it's not. So, is there anything to be classified as a positive aspect? Well, I mentioned some nice things about some parts of the technical section, so that isn't a complete mess, and the anime as a whole is not completely pointless absurdity. It has some good intentions, and the characters are not bad with their characterization and their ideas planned for them. The problem is that the execution of all of this is really bad. In other contexts with a better planning in the whole story, this could have worked well. It can be charming at times, but the flaws are too much to be ignored. Rent a Girlfriend is just another bottom of the barrel rom-com. It doesn't really have anything unique to itself to highlight it from the rest of the series of this kind. It has cute designs and ideas. If the anime would have stuck with the premise of developing the characters and the relationships to give a message of improving one's life through love and friendship, really exploring relatable problems with its character psyches, would have been really good actually. Or well, at least, if not, then throw all of that and just make something funny, full of intended nonsense. But no, it went for a middle ground, without knowing how to handle any of this, burning itself in the weight of being something far greater. So my verdict is an ascending 3 out of 10. And even with the promise of a better second season, I don't really think it's gonna improve. You cannot build something good when your bases are scorching.